I've been hearing a lot of talk about our Virginian election the other night. If you're watching this sometime in the distant future, this is 2025. If somehow you're watching this from the past, hi, how'd you do that? Um, Anyway, I hear a lot of people talking about why did the Democrats win so big, and why did the and they, I feel like I gotta say something because they're falling to the old standard. And let's just get this out of the way quick. Um, when Trump is on the ballot and it's time to vote against Trump, I'm gonna vote against Trump. But that's not what this was really. To be fair, everybody's going to have their own reason for voting the way that they voted. Um, but there's a lot of people in Virginia, and of course the exit polls aren't really asking these questions. But it wasn't about Trump. And I did not vote for Spanberger. I voted against Winsome Sears. And voting against Winsome Sears meant voting for Spanberger. I don't have any problems with Spanberger. I don't know a whole lot about Spanberger, but I know how terrible Winsome Sears is. And these are the two main issues that I have that I know for sure a lot of other people have. And so I'm just putting that out there. Is one, well, both things. She's a threat. She's a threat to all of my trans homies. And I want to protect the young cis girls too. The problem is she wants to protect young cis girls from a threat that doesn't exist by throwing all the transgender community directly into harm's way. And I'm going to say this loud and fucking clear. Transgender women, transgender girls have been using the women's restroom forever. And it's rarely been a problem. It's really never been a problem, except that there may be one or two incidents compared to the endless statistics of either just a man following a woman into the women's bathroom, or more often a man assaulting a young boy in the men's room. So you're half right. Men are the problem. Men are the problem, but it's not transgender women. Trans women are trans women. They're not men. And a man is not going to go through all of the shit to be a trans woman and all of the hormones and, everything that comes along with that just to go into the women's room. Y'all are fucking confused as fuck about this. And what do you think those trans women that you're forcing into the men's room are going to face when they get in the men's room? And what about those young cis girls when you have fully transitioned trans men entering the women's room? What are you going to do about them? Then you're going to have people threatening violence against those trans men. And you're going to have people committing violence against those trans women that are now in the men's room. That's not just an irrational fear on my part. There's a history for that. Every time you see the Republicans do a convention or, whatever, Grindr goes down. Because these phobes are not, they're not phobes as much as they are in the closet, if that makes sense. A lot of them are. And a lot of times, those people in the closet will go to great extremes to hide the way that they truly feel about themselves and the things that turn them on. And a lot of times, those great extremes mean violence. So you've got the number one reason that I voted against Winsome Sears. That's the number one reason. The number two reason, and is I need to charge the microphone. The number two reason is cannabis. This is the same reason that I am going to vote against every single fucking Republican in Virginia. I could make my complaints about them fighting Terry McAuliffe over restoring my voting rights, but we'll save that complaint, that grievance, for another day. But the road to legalization of cannabis has been a very slow road here in Virginia. And the reason for that is that Republicans kill every time that the Republicans control any one of the three houses. That's the House, the Senate, or the State House. In other words, the governor's mansion. Anytime Republicans control any one of the three houses, they kill every single cannabis bill, either by subcommittee if they control one of the House or the Senate, or if they control the governor's mansion and we actually get something voted on, they'll kill it through a veto. And this happens every year. The only thing we were ever able to get them to budge on was that they agreed to give epileptic patients affirmative defense. Which, if you don't know what affirmative defense is, it's basically kind of like a permission slip, and the courts can either accept it or reject it, whatever they feel like, whatever the judge decides. But at the same time, they wouldn't budge on opening up a processor in Virginia to create that cannabis. So it was like, okay, well, we'll give you affirmative defense, but we're not going to give you a place to get it, and, any of that. Then, like a couple years or something after that, we got them to agree to affirmative defense for whatever medical practice, and but we still didn't have no processors. They wouldn't budge on anything more than affirmative defense until the Democrats took the demo shots. On most things they are the demo shots, but another wave, another ocean. Until the Democrats took control of all three houses. And then the first year what they did was they legalized the medical program and decriminalized adult use. Major step in the right direction, except they did a very bad job implementing the medical system. We've only opened 4 of the 5 processors that were supposed to be opened. We were all promised a compassionate use program that was never delivered on. Virginia NORML promised that to our faces about the legislation, that all of these processors agreed to open these compassionate use programs, and they never did. And they also never delivered on a processor for the district that I live in. We're not going to get caught up on that because this is just the history of it. The next year, they voted, and I didn't even mention that, because when we legalized the medical program, they'd allow concentrates but not botanical flower. So then the next year, we voted for the medical, or they voted for the medical program to allow flower, and they voted to legalize adult use. But they decided on reconciliation for a retail market, which basically meant kicked it down the road for another year, knowing that we were on a midterm election and the House and the Senate were up for grabs. And what happened? We lost control of one, maybe both houses. I can't remember for sure. And then it went back to Republicans killing every single bill for a retail market or anything other substantial for cannabis from subcommittees. Then we, instead of electing Terry McAuliffe again as our governor, they tricked a bunch of people into voting for Glenn Youngkin, and now every single year that we pass, now that we control both houses again, the House and the Senate, every single year we'll pass a bill to open our retail market, and Youngkin just goes behind us and vetoes. Every single fucking year. That's the way the Republicans are for cannabis, and Winsome Sears was worse than Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin, during the campaign for governor, said that he did not know of any successful person who habitually smoked marijuana. And, even if you forget about, like, all the musical things, Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg was one of the, I've got my issues with Snoop Dogg, but Snoop Dogg is one of the hardest working people in the entire industry. But Carl Sagan was a fucking pothead. Come on. However, Winsome Sears, I think, is worse than Youngkin. And my biggest fear, and this is not an irrational fear, was that Sears would get elected and try to repeal legalization in Virginia. And I have not about a doubt that she would have done just that. I mean, tried. I don't think that she would have been able to get away with doing it, but I think she would have tried. Moreover, I think she would have also tried to reopen those torture conversion programs. I know a different subject, but I'm just saying she was bad. She was a threat. She was a threat to the community. She was a threat to cannabis. She bragged about firing her staffers for smoking pot and saying that basically that if you're a pothead, you're just going to end up burning the whole place down, and that's not good. That's not good for the future of our retail market and the Virginia economy, because all of the millions of dollars right now that are being made on cannabis in Virginia are being made on the illicit market. I'm not going to say gang members and all of that because, I know people that smoke pot or that sell pot, and they're not bad people. They're not gang members. They're not this and that, but there is that element out there. And furthermore, there's no way to regulate the illicit market because it's an illicit market. It's illegal. So, you never really know what you're getting, even when it comes from a trusted source. Did they create it themselves? Did they get it from another source? If, you're buying wax, if you know me, you know how much I love my wax. Are you buying solvent-based concentrates? If so, can you be sure that they drained it of all CO2, butane, whatever? It's there's a lot of variables to it. And with the legal market, that's one of the things that they did get right in the medical market is third-party testing. When you can have third-party testing as an adult, as a grown-ass man, fully in charge of my own life, I should have the right to put whatever I want into my own body. At the same time, as a consumer, I also deserve the right to know what I'm putting into my own body. And with all of the business going to the illicit market, there's no way that I can be guaranteed that, because they can write whatever they want on the package and it doesn't matter. It could be total bullshit. As a matter of fact, I did recently, within the past, 6 months or something, buy some edibles that were supposed to be, it was 10 gummies per package. The total package was supposed to be 1,000 milligrams, which would have made each piece 100 milligrams. So heavy duty stuff. I was all about it. And I bought it and I tried it and it wasn't working. I ate another piece. I ended up eating the whole bag and barely felt anything. And edibles do very much work on me. It's just that these ones were just, they straight up lied on the package. It was bunk. And depending on where you're at, and who you're dealing with, you could still find some of that potential for violence within the illicit market, like we used to have to worry about during Prohibition. I can't tell you back in the day how many street corners I got left standing on waiting for somebody to come back with my weed, and have people, when I say something about it, seeing those same people later, flash a gun or something. Even when you're talking about hard drugs, the bigger risk isn't the drugs themselves. It is, the drug deal gone bad thing. It is the risk of the people that you end up having to deal with. Now, again, not all drug dealers are going to be like that, but there is definitely that element there. And that is consequently, or whatever you want to call it, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but, that is how we beat the cartels. Same thought as we beat the gangs and, mobs or whatever, here is we take away their marketplace, because you can't just prohibit it and take away one dealer, because then another dealer is going to pop up. Anywhere there's a demand for a product, the marketplace is going to fill that, legal or illegal, dangerous or not dangerous, no matter what the penalty is, somebody is going to step in and try to make that money. And, your better bet is to legalize it, regulate it, do some good with the revenue that comes through, and make the product as safe as possible. Then that way, you kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, because you're making it safer for the people that consume that product. You're also providing legal discourse for people getting ripped off or whatever, and you're also taking a lot of power away from some very bad and dangerous people. Anyway, that is why I voted the way that I voted, and it really didn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. Again, I will vote against Donald Trump when that's on the ballot, but I think most of us here in Virginia, we voted on Virginia issues. I'm just saying, though. Thank you all for watching. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully a more fun video.